Today I'm not only going to show you some basic track laying, but also how to make a curved loop, add working signals to a passing loop, and even more. So let's get into it. First things first, start TANE and select Create a Route. Here is an example. Then, using your visuals of this video, position the bottom end of the screen and select the Tracks tab. Now, I'm using Procedural Track because it's easier and automatically creates all frogs and wing rails on switches. Bear in mind the Procedural Track does have an overhead. For instance, it needs every sleeper rendered, so it does demand a reasonably capable computer, more so than older track types. The procedural tracks in TANE SP3 have few vices. Perhaps the most reported is the extra overhead. Every sleeper and fine detail has to be individually rendered, which can be quite a significant load. Where there are many tracks in view in particular, and each of the 4 versions has a widely varied graphics distance capability regarding rendering as well. Select the track type, use the name shown here on the screen, from the list. Hit the plus sign which allows you to add track, and follow the events on the screen. From the bottom position as mentioned earlier, click once the mouse button to start laying track, and move right up to the opposite end of the panel. Keep the track parallel to the marked line of the square on the panel where you started. Note, this is not mandatory, I just do it in the test track for precision in this tutorial. And click again. You should now have one nice track from bottom to top of the panel. For the passing siding, we position ourselves somewhere near the middle. I didn't quite get the middle, but never mind. And holding the shift key down, click somewhere near the first track where you want to start. Whoops, I forgot to hold the shift key. And that's what happens. It tries to join the nearest track. Undo it to recover, and let's start that again. And like the first step, move up, holding your mouse button to keep the track with you, and click the second point around the same distance from the first track. Don't worry too much about making it the exact same distance, because we'll go back in a moment and position it more precisely. Okay, zoom in closer and select the little arrow just below the plus sign you last clicked. This is the move function. In this case, I'm going to move the circle that marks the spline point of the track, so it is just touching the adjacent spline point on the other track. Move to the other end of the second track and position it the same distance. Now you should have the tracks perfectly parallel, at least enough to get consistent results for the next step. You can pick whatever distance you want. Standards vary not just between countries, but in USA even between states and railroads, as happens elsewhere. So research your prototype before deciding on distance apart for tracks. And the distance also varies between passing loops and yards, for instance in some railroads. Staying at the same end, we'll construct the first switch. I'm going to simplify my instructions now, as most of the track manipulation is as before. So select the plus to add another track. Click it on a starting point as in the video and an ending point also. If it all goes to plan, you should have a track layout as in the video. If not, undo and try again. You'll now notice the second track, previously nice and straight, has gone all wonky. Wonky, well, that's an Aussie slang. So you need to select the straighten tool and click the wonky track. I love that word wonky. It magically goes back to straight again. Then select the track delete. That's the red X. And delete the track section hanging off the bottom of the track switch. It will disappear and leave a well-formed switch entry, I hope. Note you have 2 red and green arrows at 2 points. One, where the track leaves track 1, is the genuine switch point. The other one is left over from where we deleted the odd bit of track. So, on the track tab, at the top is the track symbol, and to its right is another less obvious symbol, which actually designates track accessories like switch levers, signals and more. Click that and use the red X to remove both the red and green arrows. The one on the switch has to be replaced by a selected switch lever. The other is not needed. Yes, I have changed the procedure because I was not happy with the sharp joint that was created. So go back to the track icon and select the move arrow again. Select the switch blade section and move it down a little, creating a much smoother curve. So now we can select the switch lever from the list as shown in the next sequence. I use a switch lever suffix of C and R. Use the name, if you wish, that is up on the screen. And zoom in clicking on the next tie before the blade of the switch. You now have your first switch assembled and operational. Now move to the other end and do the same again for the other end of the loop siding. Just remember, you will be going from left to right, whereas the first switch was reversed, right to left. Watch the video to see what I mean. Don't forget to straighten the track and remove the end bit that is not needed. Now we have a complete loop. All we need now is the signals to make it safe for trains to avoid collisions. However, to avoid any issues with track height, we need to set all as the same height. So select the Advanced tab at the bottom of the track panel. See it in the video and click it. A new set of tabs will show up. The left symbol, once selected, can be clicked on the spline circle at the end of the track. This will show the track height. It should be 0.0. Then the next symbol to the right is used to set all the other track splines to the same height, just in case one is wrong. We will have an example of this shortly. So, as in the video, click each white circle all along the track. For all intents and purposes, we should have a nice, even, straight, level track. Note, this is not always what we want, but we'll cover that alternative another time. Zoom right back out as per the video and make sure yours looks about the same. It does not need to be exact, just overall similar. Now for some housekeeping. To make things easier to look at, we'll add a default grass texture to the whole panel. It is just cosmetic, but it's easier on the eyes. Select the texture tab, as seen in the video, and type the word cab. The words should show up there for you. And you should have pop up cab lawn shadow as a texture. If for some reason you don't have it, and this certainly can be the case, just select some other dark green grass texture of your choice. They're all applied the same way. Then you should see a star cross, as I call it, as shown in the video, somewhere on the route panel, not the track panel, but the actual board you're laying track on. If not, right-click on the ground panel, you'll see a star cross pop in. As in the video, spray some green texture around the cross. Normally, I adjust the two dials, radius and scale, to the smallest setting, but not necessarily for this exercise. Then, select the yellow squares just below the scale dial. A window will pop up. Select the Begin button, and like magic, the whole panel is laid with rich green grass. You can close that window then. Okay, that's done. Now let's move on. Let's get into the signalling. I'll minimise the verbal again here, as it is quite straightforward once you know how. And while I've used a particular signal, generally it should work the same way with all other, or with most other type signals. Signals have a suffix of a number. Most common are 4, 5, 6 and 8. But there are some with other suffix, just that I've never used them. And it is surprising how few routes use signals in any substantial way. This is why I always plan signalling with a test track, to ensure I can get it working. I recently did a test track for a diamond crossing, shown here. And eventually got it working. Most examples I've seen forget that train signals look ahead 2 blocks, So any tests they have or any installations they do need to be designed for a diamond crossing with several blocks in every direction. That's a topic for another video, and yes, there is on my list a video about diamond crossings. So away we go, let's signal this passing loop. First though, because signals have a 2-block awareness, as I mentioned earlier, we do need to put a buffer at the end of each track. In the track accessory symbol, type haze, the word is shown up there, and choose one of the 3 colours available and place it on the end of each track. These buffers act as a block of signals, which helps us work on a test track which is shorter than 3 or 4 blocks in every direction. Now I need to move back to the other end of the track, ready to proceed down the track adding signals as I go. I will be using a G-style signals, which are available from jointed rail for this exercise, but you can use whatever takes your fancy, as I mentioned earlier. The first signal I use is number 5, which is the most common to use on a single track. I'll place one at a reasonable distance from the first switch of the loop. Then I'll use a number 6 distance just before the switch. However, in a real route, replacement would be further back to cope with longer trains, particularly ones that needed space to stop. You'll note this is a 2-lamp signal, as it needs this to show if the signal is set, diverged or straight. And then use the question mark as shown by the arrow to bring up the settings screen. Then I'll move to the next switch in the loop and select a number 4 signal, placing it on the loop track, not the main track at this time. I'll come back to that later. Then, after the loop, I will put another number 5, which is a simple block signal for the 2 blocks ahead. That's it now. I'll work back to the other end. Then going the other way, I place another number 5 on the opposite side of the track and next to the number 5 pointing the other way. Moving along, I place another number 5, again facing the opposite direction, and next to the number 5 already there. However, on reflection, I've decided I must put a signal that shows the switch status, which is the number 6 LD, that's left divergent. So remove the number 5 and put the correct signal in its place. Again, because this is a divergent signal, it has 2 heads, and I use the question mark to bring up the settings screen. Note this time I have a slightly different settings screen, as I now have the opportunity to set which direction the divergence is, left or right. The default in this case is left, which is what I want. I can ignore all the other settings in this simple example. For instance, if you had AI trains, the settings parameter may apply, but I'm not going to address that here. I may another time. Then I move to the next switch, in fact just before it, and put another number 4 before the switch. You may have noticed I used a pick list to quickly find the right signal set after I lost my place. I will cover pick lists in another video and can confirm they're an indispensable tool while building a route. Again, this is just watching the 2 blocks ahead, and it will go red if the switch is set to diverge from the main. No need to worry about any special settings here either. Then I move just past the next switch, actually to the signal I first placed at the beginning, and put another number 5 opposite the signal there. Again, this is just watching the blocks ahead, but in this example, only the next block, which is the last. I can get away with this because I will test the setup with just a single locomotive. Now, I can select the first test locomotive and place it on the track with the first signal in front. So let's place the locomotive where we want it. And now the noisy engine takes over, and I'll now move right to the other end to place a Pennsylvania Railroad GP9 diesel here. I selected this as the Pennsylvania Railroad used to run long nose first in the early days of diesel, as did many other railroads. For this one, I will add a couple of cars, coal hoppers, just because I felt like it, I guess. Now, I will save the status of the route surveyor file so I can switch to train driver mode and just see how well it works. Then, back at the main menu, select the correct route. I'll then view the sessions menu and finally get into driver mode. It should default back to the first locomotive placed, and it usually does, but I have had instances where it doesn't, so be aware. Also, I will use simple controls as an example. Driving finesse is not the issue of this tutorial. Notice the signal settings are not necessarily set correct. They have yet to be initialised, which will happen when I set the first switch to going into the loop. And because the train system only looks 2 blocks ahead, the signal at the other end of the loop is still set to red. Although that could be that the second switch needs setting to the diverge as well. But I don't think so. I'll see you on the way back with the other train. Now, I'm off and you should see the signal set to red as the engine goes past. This EMD SD9 is a repaint version from Jointed Rail. As with the next signal, and I think I can confirm the next switch does not need to be set, but it is still red, because it needs a train coming the other way to initialise those past the point of locomotive 1. Now I might move up to the other train and select it. Control automatically changes to that train when I click it. If your eyes are good, you can see, after I set the next switch from non-diverging, the signals are set the full 2 blocks ahead. This is an original weathered GP9, also from Jointed Rail, which has a neat internal cab graphics look. Sound set's not too bad either, but I think the horn could possibly be a bit better. You might note that although the switch is set for the right track, the signal is still showing a caution aspect. This is because the following signal shows the switch it is controlling is not set to the correct track. However, I now have the switch at the other end still set to diverging. So if I continue, theoretically I would derail, which means the signal is doing its job, warning me of the issue up front. So, accordingly, I can set the switcher straight ahead and get going. Notice the last signal before the train runs out of track is amber, and this is because I put the haze bumper at the track end, and it emulates a stop signal, so quite effective in warning of an issue, no matter how far ahead the end of the track is. I might quickly mention here, while the GP9 finishes its run, as an assigned TRS2019 beta tester, I have a host of videos on the new version underway, including thoughts on the new interface, PBR textures, new procedural tracks with matching PBR ballast, and a lot more. Let's go back and finish the trip of the blue SC9 diesel. I'll select it, change the switch to diverge, and you'll see the signal set accordingly. That is, the next two blocks are clear. Green is the last signal, even though you probably can't see it, should set to amber to warn of end of track. At this point, while the train moves to end of track, I must advise this signal setup is far from perfect. For instance, if a train from the other end decides it would want to go via the loop that is not signalled from that direction, that means it's not protected. So I should add signals for that as well. But for the simplistic purposes here, I chose not to. And given US keep right rules, it may not even be necessary, but it does not, for example, allow for running the wrong side of the loop, when perhaps a derailment happened on the normal right-hand straight track of loop. And there are many other reasons to carefully plan your signalling, and even more critical if you're developing sessions, particularly with AI trains, but that perhaps is for another time. I developed this tutorial for a couple of reasons. Firstly, to get back to some TRAINZ basics, because many TANE users and soon TRS2019 users will be new to even some of the basics of track laying and signalling. The second reason is to encourage your comments and reactions to this type of tutorial, which is very important to me, because like many of you, I want to get better at what I do, be it these tutorials or my P&O route building, some other product reviews I have planned, or whatever else I can put together. The release of this tutorial for TRAINZ enthusiasts will only be successful if I can get some constructive feedback from you. I hope you can get some time to give me this feedback. There are several ways to do this. 1. Use the like button. It's a simple way to have your voice heard and may give me a general impression. Or there is an even more useful way. That is to use the comment section below this video to be more specific with your opinions. My main reason for doing these tutorials is to help all train simulator fans, be they TRAINZ, Dovetail Train SimWorld and a number of other train simulators out there. So, to help you watch this space as I listen and learn from your feedback, please consider subscribing to my channel and ring the bell on the right side. That way you'll always get a notice when I upload something new. And don't forget the various train simulator forums. That's another way to link with the community, and is why the various train sim communities are so great. In the meantime, I hope I can catch up with you next time I upload one of these tutorials. Okay, that's it from me for now, so hooroo from down under.